All statements and opinions expressed by guests of the Adult in the Room podcast are strictly their own and do not necessarily reflect the beliefs or opinions of the host, producers, or advertisers. All interviews are presented in their most complete possible form in the interests of free speech. No statements should be interpreted as financial, legal, or medical advice. Listener and viewer discretion are strongly advised.
It's the Adult in the Room podcast with Victoria Taft. That's me. Well, welcome to the Adult in the Room podcast for Tuesday afternoon. How are ya? Boy, a bombshell in the J6 pipe bomber case. Today, code red for California, a state that's failing in so many different ways. I'll be talking to a political analyst, Mike Netter, about that. And about rebuilding the Golden State. And we'll do that in just a few minutes. And law and disorder makes everyone less safe and no more apparent than in the Pacific Northwest, where two woke cities have decided to deal with the bad guys in two distinctly different ways. And yet the left is screeching. But before we get going on that, I want you to know what you're looking at. I want you to know what you're looking at. Financier Shark Tank's Kevin O'Leary often says, to be effective, you must be able to distinguish the signal from the noise, the message from the tertiary crapola around it. So whenever Trump sends a signal, for example, the left makes the noise and draws the chaff, endless noise, endless chaff, to make a point and to dissuade people from looking at what he's doing right. So every day, it's just one more thing. Trump does something and the left declares that Donald Trump has committed another felony. The outrage machine is turned up to 11. You saw what he did, but then the chaff is deployed and things get murky again. Can he really shoot those Coke boats? Is that against the law? You and I have to be able to distinguish the signal from the noise. We have to do this. We are getting more chaotic in our society, and it's intentionally done to cause chaos and more chaos. Now we want to give Trump his due, not to the point of slavishness. You know how that is. Slavish devotion is so untidy. But you know what you're looking at. You got to know. And what's the point of why he's doing what he's doing? What is he doing? O'Leary once said of Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple, that Jobs was 80% signal, 20% noise, and that the most successful and genius level people in existence in humanity were always 80%, 20% like that, or at least getting toward 100% signal, because they keep their mind on what's the right thing to do. And so you know how to differentiate. You know what you see, but not everyone does. You've got to be able to tell them what's going on. And let's, like I say, take example, the drug boats. Here's a foundational points about these. Trump says fentanyl is killing Americans. Trump says fentanyl is intentionally killing Americans. Trump says fentanyl is intentionally coming from precursors from China, Mexican drug labs, and the whole of government approach from Venezuela to bring this poison and to poison pills and send them to America. Twice as many Americans die every year from fentanyl poisoning as were killed in the entire length of time of the Vietnam War. Twice as many per year. Trump declares these killers to be terrorists. That gives him carte blanche and legal authority to kill them. And he says as they approach our shores to sell the drugs laced with poisons that will kill Americans, he's going to kill them. This is not a mistake. They do it on purpose, and they say that this is against the law, but it's not. That's Trump's signal is they're bad. It's legal. I'm doing it. This is killing our country. The noise is the fake allegations surrounding it are somehow not correct. It's being done on purpose. So I just wanted you to know the signal from the noise. A lot of noise out there. And I'll tell you how. Telling you this because the next jaw dropper, right? The next jaw-dropping story comes from documents released about the January 6th pipe bomber. You know, the guy was just arrested last week, right? I mean, so much has happened. We had the National Guards guys who were, one was killed, one was wounded. That was a terrorist attack. Excuse me. That was a terrorist attack. But now there's something new about the J6 pipe bomber story. That guy was arrested last week. And now, what are we finding out? We've learned from congressional documents that the FBI in Washington, D.C., the lead agency on the pipe bomb and J6 investigations, almost certainly knew the identity of the pipe bomber within 3 months of the January 6th riot. Within 3 months of him planting, allegedly, the pipe bombs on January 5th. Okay, so let's take a look at this. We know, according to documents from the Justice Department in the charging documents, right? Or at least we know the affidavit in support of the charge. And we know that the pipe bomber started collecting bomb-making equipment in 2019 and early 2019, right? You see that here, page 4 of the document from the Justice Department, outlining all of the things the bad guy did, the alleged bad guy, he reminds me of Steve Urkel. I mean, he kind of has that, did I do that kind of look, but anyway, so the folks who have been on the other side and have now decided they were going to say that this guy was actually the one piece of information that's leaked out about him, actually two. One, that he's an anarchist. The other one is that he was really upset about the stolen election in 2020. Okay. A lot of people think that the election was stolen in 2020. There was certainly something hinky going on. I think we can all agree about that. No question about it. I hardly think this guy's going to care about it because I don't think he's like on Trump's side or anything. But here's the deal. He started collecting bomb-making materials in 2019. Before the election. There goes. The other thing is that this has been hidden. Pipe bombs were manufactured, cap-ins. We're looking at all this stuff. Look at all the things that he did that he's alleged to have done. And then they found him in the proximity. We don't have video of the second pipe bomb, emplacement. But what we do have is we have cell phone information. We have where his car was. We have where his phone was in proximity to the DNC and the RNC. And the RNC was a Capitol Club. And then the DNC bomb was moved from the Congressional Black Caucus to the DNC. We don't know why. And we also know that there wasn't enough TNT or whatever sort of explosive powder that he used to cause damage. But we didn't know that at the time. We just saw the Flava Flav sized timer, the kitchen timer on this. And then, of course, everybody said, oh, my goodness, this is terrible. We should stop everything going on at the Capitol. And, of course, what everything was the debate on the absolute lunacy of what happened during the 2020 election cycle, counting ballots beyond their dates. I mean, illegally counting things. There were, with the fact that the different Pennsylvania, Georgia, and another state stopped counting at the same time. There were all kinds of really hinky things. Even if you aren't a dyed-in-the-wool, I'm crazy about, AOC person, you would be able to know that there was something really bad going on about these coincidences that were going on the election. And so they wanted to go and they wanted an audit. Okay. They wanted an audit. So Ted Cruz, and I can't remember who else it was. I thought it was Josh Hawley, but maybe not. And they were going to appeal, which is totally legal. It's not done often because usually this kind of thing doesn't happen to the extent it did in 2020, but they were going to do that and enter the pipe bomb distraction, the diversion, which took away police from Capitol Hill, the Capitol building, the Capitol complex, and sent it over just a little ways away to oversee what was going, hey man, what's going on at the DNC? Now, of course, we've already talked about the fact that Kamala Harris was in the DNC. She was removed from the Capitol building. And remember, they predicated all kinds of charges against the J6ers on the fact that the newly elected vice president of the United States, and I will add the first black woman, or, she always ran on being Indian in California, but now, of course, now she's black. Okay, so she's both. She's two candidates in one. And so she was spirited away to go to the DNC where there was a pipe bomb out front, and somebody'd seen it. And so this would be an existential threat to the life of this precious human being and others that they allowed to continue to walk around, but nothing was ever done of it, and it was swept under the rug. Indeed, the Benny Thompson, who was in charge of the six J6 committee, the big Hollywood production they did that gave absolutely no any information whatsoever that was helpful to Donald Trump. It was all bad and hand-selected. Bad news. That's not legal. I mean, this wasn't a legal proceeding. This is a show. But nevertheless, he didn't know all about the pipe bomb story. But this all, of course, in fact, Benny Thompson's talking about, well, we didn't put it on our 845-page report, but we did put it in an addendum or an appendix or something that there was a pipe bomb. Homie, no, that dog will not hunt. We know now too much. And we also know that this was kept secret. This identity of this guy, this is alleged by the Congress, that this guy's identity has been kept secret. Here we go with some more information. I'm gonna share with you this document from the House Government Committee. I don't know, is it oversight or rules? And here is a deposition testimony under oath of Stephen D'Antuono. He's the guy who used to be in charge of the FBI Washington field office. That's one of the reasons why the Washington field office is going to be closed, because it became so incredibly politically invasive and active. And at the behest of all these politicos in the C-suite, 7th floor of the Justice Department, the FBI. Okay, so D'Antuono had just come over from the Gretchen Whitmer Fednapping case, in which most of the people involved in this alleged Fednapping, this kidnapping of the the governor of the state, Michigan, were people who were either FBI assets or FBI agents. And there were a couple of people with no teeth who were on the spectrum who said, well, okay, well, let's do it. And they set them up. Anyway, some of them were in jail. Okay. So somebody thought they were doing something wrong. But I mean, let's face it, there would not have been any kidnapping case were it not for the existence of all the FBI agents who made it happen. Okay, so here this guy, he's also in charge of the J6 stuff. He's the one who oversaw the investigation and perhaps even the planning of the January 6th information op, which that was clearly, according to everybody I've ever spoken to who has a background in investigations and intelligence, okay? Nobody believes this was a spontaneous grassroots riot. It was started and it was finished by the same side, if you know what I mean. So here's this discussion, Q&A. Now here's an important thing. Here's Stephen D'Antuono, who says, he's asked by Thomas Massey, we received a video of this, the alleged perpetrator uses a cell phone, where that produced nothing. It's a geofensive data cell phone records. D'Antuono says, yeah, so there's a lot of phone data that came in. Yes, I've seen the video. I've watched the same video. We put out the same video. It looks like a phone. Was it a real phone, not a real phone? Was it a ruse? Was it I picked up my phone several times at meetings going, oh yeah, I got to take this call and walk out right now. The phone's not on, right? So was the person just sitting there trying to pretend like they're on a bench talking on a phone call? We don't know until we find the right person and ask them those questions. At that moment during this investigation, he already knew who the pipe bomber was. He knew the name of this guy. he knew him. That's a problem. And here's what he says. We did a complete geofence. We have complete data. Not complete because there's some data that was corrupted by one of the providers, not purposely by them, right? It's just unusual circumstance that we have corrupt data from one of the providers. I'm not sure. I can't remember which one. What? But for that day, which is awful because we don't have that information to search. Oh, no. So it could have been that provider. Yeah, with our luck, with this investigation, it probably was right. But so maybe if we did have that, the data wasn't corrupted and it wasn't purposely corrupted. I don't want any conspiracy theories, right? To my knowledge, it wasn't corrupted, but that could have been good information that we don't have, right? So that is painful for us not to have that. Okay, so explicitly said we don't have the phone data. Now we cut over to the affidavit that supports the charges against the bad guy. All of a sudden, in this latest iteration of information about the J6 bomber alleged, what do we have? Cell phone data? Geofencing? We know exactly where he is. He was in front of the RNC, he was in front of the DNC, he was in front of all the places that we thought he was setting down the bomb with a Flavor Flav kitchen timer on it. And nobody saw it. It's just a miracle. And so, what is 8 inches long? So, Cole's cell phone interacted with provider tower 45111, which faces west, and they go through all the geolocation. You can read it for yourself. All where his 2017 Nissan Sentra was, where the Virginia license plates were read. They had this information when they announced the arrest and charging of Brian Cole. They said they did nothing else with that investigation. They just looked at with the information they had, and they were able to ascertain who did it. And that's in the months since Trump took office. Okay? They knew that was. And they knew back then. This is a problem because they had all this stuff, all this information, and they didn't tell the Congress, asking literal questions about this information. Here's another one. Here's a little sort of highlight reel, if you will, written down of the Guantanamo testimony. So the FBI couldn't determine whether the placement of the bomb was a diversionary tactic for the events of January 6th. Mr. Massey, are you familiar with the diversion theory? Mr. Massey asks, are you familiar with this diversion theory? Like they were trying to divert away from the Capitol and take cops off the job, which they succeeded in doing. So there weren't enough cops to help stop the breach of the Capitol. There weren't enough cops. Why? Because they're off looking at these Flavor Flav kitchen timers on pipe bombs built allegedly by some guy who's I don't even know. He's a bail bondsman. I think his family's woke. I think we're told he's an anarchist of some sort. But no, we're told, oh no, he was very upset about the 2020 election. Okay. How come you were collecting bomb-making materials in 2019 then? What was that excuse about? Okay. So, yeah, I've heard that people say that, says Stephen D'Antuono. I've done a lot of media reports. I was trying to get the information out there, tips and stuff like that. I will not speculate. That looks like the head of the Capitol Police believes it was a diversion. And he says, so Stephen's son, chief of police, yes, I believe he wrote that in his book, and it's pure speculation. There's no intelligence. Look, I ran the investigation for 2 years until I stepped out. We don't know. We don't even know what gender this is at this point. Yeah, he did, because he knew the name of the guy. Or at least it was in his case file. Why? Because, here, let me show you the information that we have. This is important. This is very important. Here we go. I want to make sure we get it. Add to stage. Here we go. So here's one of the documents that note that they knew in April of 2021 the identity of the pipe bomber. Why did they not roll that dude up? Why is that? Why? You'd think that they do that. Here's another. This according to, these were from the charging documents, the affidavit. And so they know who this guy is. They had no trouble. Well, I shouldn't say they had no trouble. It was just painstaking police work, right? To try to find him. They know this guy's name. Why are they hiding it? Because it wasn't a white supremacist that they were hoping it would be? Who is this guy working with? That, of course, is the question of the hour. Here's Stephen Sund. Just want to add this more because I think it's important that we know, and we're going to talk to Mike Netter coming up in a minute, calling an audible to Mike, so I just want you to hear that. They knew who it was, and they knew 3 months after placing the Flava Flav-sized kitchen timer pipe bombs by the RNC and the DNC. I also wonder, and this is a good question, Julie Kelly asked this question, excellent question. Why didn't they have video of setting this thing at the RNC? What happened with that? And now the Biden FBI knew who the J6 pipe bomber was the whole time. What is the rationale for hiding that information? Okay. So here's our guy. Who's this guy? Brian Cole. Have you seen this video yet? Here he is with Benjamin Crump, the infamous and famous, notorious Benjamin Crump, the race-baiting attorney who is an ambulance chaser who goes to the scene of a crime, or what he's going to call a crime, and says that something happened to this, and so he's a black victim. And for example, Trayvon Martin, that's where we really started seeing him on scene. Benjamin Crump. And, poor George Zimmerman, he's trying to defend himself. Trayvon's got him down on the ground and he's beating his face in and he's bashing his head in. And George Zimmerman pulls out his gun. Trayvon Martin, it was shown in court, reaches for the gun and Zimmerman lets him have it with his gun. Okay. But of course, it was George Zimmerman's fault, right? Okay. Here we have our alleged pipe bomber with Benjamin Crump. And what's he doing? Well, his family owns a bunch of bail bonds companies. There's nothing against the law for that. And what they said was, I think it was in Tennessee, the local district attorney, the assistant district attorney, was going after these bail bonds companies, and they were making their lives miserable. And we know how that can happen. We know how these big preening peacocks try to get over, and try to stomp on the dreams of the business owners all the time. Okay, from counties. Just happened to a friend of mine, not with the DA, but with the county. Okay, here he is, and he's announcing. And here's our guy. This is years ago. Listen, she said, hopefully. Oh, that's our picture. You can't listen to that, but here he is, right here. See him? There he is. There he is.
Mr. Hambrick, and the final person you will hear from before we engage in your questions would be Mr. Brian Cole, the president of Free at Last Bail Bond Company. Mr. Cole.
Yes.
Like the name of it.
I've done business all over the United States. I'm in 20 states, and I've never met the opposition that I've met with Zimmerman coming after our company for what he has. He's defamed me. He's called my insurance company. He's, went above and beyond, going to other jurisdictions, defaming me and Mr. Holmes. I've never seen this before, and we hope that the Department of Justice can come in and do a brief investigation, because what we see and what we've seen is a lot of questionable acts that Mr. Zimmerman has demonstrated towards minority-owned companies. So please, I just hope they would come in and investigate and look at his actions on what he's done towards, minority-owned companies.
He doesn't look like he's like on the autism spectrum that we keep hearing about, right? And I have some video of Stevenson, the former Capitol Hill Police Agency, saying that he thought it was a diversion. And maybe we'll play it later on, but I got to get to our guest. And here's the takeaway. Just remember who the perp is, the alleged perp. Who is that guy? There's your signal. Forget all this other stuff, the noise around it. We now know who he is. Let's find out what he was doing there and for what purpose he was setting those Flava Flav timer bombs at these locations. Bombs that actually didn't have that much powder in them. This is a question. This is a big deal. And you need to know why. And I hope we get to the bottom of it. I hope, right? This is a big deal. So look for that, because that's your signal. The noise is hiding it for all these years. The noise is releasing video that was purposely obscured so we could not tell the race or the gender of the individual who was placing the bombs. The cell phone data, gee, guys, it was just lost. We didn't know. It was the only part of that whole investigation that was corrupted. Gosh, what a bummer, says Stephen DeAntuono. What a doggone bummer. They have no problem finding everybody who was within the Capitol District on J6. No problem whatsoever. But boy, can't get that. Why? Who is that guy? Do they know him? Do they know the group that hired him to do that? Does he work with a cell of who knows what? Who knows? Perhaps we will find out. And that will be the signal for you. And I just wanted to let you know that just keep your head straight. Just keep looking forward. Keep walking forward. Look for the facts. Let's find out where the facts take us. Let's not go into places where we are required to speculate a whole bunch to make sense of anything. Let's just keep the signal in mind and get rid of the noise. Because the noise, you know what that is? That's the left. That is the left. I mean, for the most part. Sometimes it's the cops. There you go. Well, I did want to talk about California because California it's code red time in California. There's so much wrong with what's going on in that state. One of my states. I write the West Coast report for the PJ Media every week. And I give you little samplings of what's going on in Washington, Oregon, and in California. And California is, it's on fire. It's on fire. They can't afford certain things because they've given all this money away to illegal aliens, which is true. They've not been able to pay some of their bills, and they've gone begging to Washington, D.C. after they've been told, look, we're not going to give you the Obamacare subsidies. And now they're talking about a billionaire tax. Oh, sure. That's great. You know what billionaires have? Money. They'll get out. So let's talk about that with Mike Netter. Rebuild California is his favorite thing. He wants to make sure that California can finally be rebuilt into a place where we can be proud of it again. God, I love California, but I don't like their leadership. Mike Netter, thanks so much for coming on the Adult in the Room podcast. How are you?
Victoria, I'm doing fantastic today. How are you doing?
It's good to have your energy.
With an adult in the room, because frankly, in Sacramento and California, I'm not even sure they allow toddlers to supervise from what's going on out here, actually, where I'm at. It's fascinating to hear you talk about a billionaire tax, which is a bunch of hyperbole. I'm going to jump right in, but I'm going to get off a quick commercial. Is that okay? Even if
Sure.
it's not Victoria, you invited me in, so I tend to take things over. So, everyone out there who's watching this, I'm sharing this show on my feed last night. Make sure to follow me at
Excellent.
Mike on X, or Twitter as it's still known to us veterans. Follow me on Facebook at my real name, Mike Netter. Also, go to our Rebuild California groups where we have about 70 of them, one per county, as we help gather petitions for direct democracy in California. And here's a shocker, and I know you're not a Democrat if I'm going to say this. If you have a job and are on LinkedIn, feel free to go there and follow me too, because the reality is together, social media like the show I'm on right now, we are the media now, and we have the
Yeah,
ability
it's
to
true.
upsert the mainstream, get the truth out there, which are some of the things I'm going to talk about today. Victoria, I'm ready to dive right in. So tell me when you'd like me to jump into the deep end of the pool.
Well, let's talk about what Gavin Newsom said at the what is that? Why do I keep forgetting what the heck it's called? The book, what is it? The book, whatever, the New York Times. Well, I tell you what, I will answer that question because I'm going to play Gavin Newsom being questioned about the billionaire tax, the alleged one-time billionaire tax. Let's find out what he says.
A wealth tax proposal in California that I think you are adamantly against.
Yes, I am.
And we have a mayor that's coming here in New York who would like to have a wealth tax if he could. You couldn't be more diametrically opposed.
Yeah, well, I want to be a Big Ten party. It's about addition, not subtraction.
But this idea of a unifying theory of the case.
I mean, I think we all want to be protected. We all want to be
Unifying
respected.
theory.
We all want to be connected to something bigger than ourselves. We have.
Okay. I just want you to know that what Andrew Ross Sorkin asked him to do was to call out and specify what the unifying theory of is of his Big Tent party and why it is helped in any way or form with the idea of a wealth tax. The wealth tax is a 5% tax. And it doesn't necessarily tax the real estate because that's already taxed. It taxes IP. It taxes bank accounts, stock options, all of those things in one snapshot in time. And they expect the 200 billionaires that they're going to fleece with this retroactive tax to pay up so that they can pay for the health care for illegal aliens. Do I about have that right, Mike?
Well, you do, accept a couple key points which get missed in this.
Okay.
When you open the barn door to everything, let's gather around the concept of what a wealth tax is and what you consider wealthy. Now, as many of you watching this show are going, I'm going to guess he's not 30, and that would be absolutely correct. Being a little bit older, I remember when a million used to be a lot of money, and we've
Sure.
lost track today of what a billion is.
Yep.
A wealth tax or asset tax. And let me start by explaining the danger of this. I've talked about this a few times. What a great recharge. I'm glad you're asking this question. Means you're taxed on your assets. So let's be clear on a couple things. It can be real estate, or maybe not. It's collectibles. It's the car you have in your driveway. And many people out there go, I like to stick it to those 200 billionaires that are going to miss the money. But the problem to begin with, one, it's not really legal because it taxes you on assets you haven't cashed in yet.
Oh, that's right. That's exactly
Hold on,
right.
let me explain something. Sorry, Victoria, I'm on a roll.
You're going to
here.
mansplain it. That's so
I'm
fine.
gonna
I'm kidding
mansplain
around with
because
you.
it's a danger to everybody out there. Because many Californians, we sit here and we have equity in our homes, okay?
Sure.
And many of you out there watching this, well, you bought a home, or your mom and pa bought a home, or your mom and pa, commonly known as your grandparents, bought a home a ways back, and that home now, maybe you finally have hit the point where you owe 30 grand and it's worth $1 million. Once you start allowing the government to tax on assets, then becomes the point. You ready for a shocker? Or you look like you're sitting down, okay?
I am sitting down. I
Government,
don't usually, but
especially in
no.
California, never has enough money. So
I
no
know.
matter how much money we give them, they're always going to want more. So
Sure.
then they start lowering the definition of
course.
what wealth is.
Yeah.
So then they're going to turn around and say, hey, all you people have worked hard all your lives. not you illegal aliens, of course, because you haven't worked hard. We're going to give you everything for free, which, by the way, is my retirement plan, to go over to Mexico and come back without necessarily my passport so I can get everything for free. Being a refugee from California, that's my ultimate retirement. But let's go back to what I'm talking about here. So as they're going to lower the bar on this, they're going to say, hey, you people whose homes are worth $1 million, your car in your driveway, which is now worth 50, thanks to Gavin inflation, shall we call it, which is worth more, we're going to start taxing you on that, even though you're not selling them. And before everybody goes out there goes, well, he's being a little draconian and weird, let me give you an example of something that LA actually passed last year called the mansion tax. Are you familiar?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, I am.
Now,
I like to watch those real estate shows, and they're always complaining about it.
Indeed, they do. And for the mansion tax means that if you go and sell a property over $5 million, which pretty much is many properties in Los Angeles, including Ma and Pa Kettle, as we use that acronym, if you will, who own a small strip mall or apartment building, they may be even taking a loss on that, but they are subject to a tax on the gross proceeds. So this is setting the precedent for government that they are going to start taxing on wealth, even though it's unrealized
assets.
Book value, as we say in accounting. And that's the problem. And this is why Gavin Newsom, when he sits there and goes, whether you like it or not, and full disclosure, I'm one of the guys that started the recall of him that made the ballot. So he's not exactly a fan of mine. Funny, I've never been invited to his podcast, story for another day. The reality is, Gavin Newsom doesn't want to tick off the 200 billionaires in California because they support his corruption, especially liberal ones, as you saw with Halle Berry this week, making fun of Gavin and Gavin trying to kiss and make up, like it's a scene from a James Bond movie. But the reality is Gavin Newsom doesn't care about gouging the normal citizens of California, and the billionaire tax being proposed by the idiots. Well, they're all idiots, even though some of the Republicans, but let's assume they're the same ones, no adults in the room, in the state assembly and state senate, and by the unions. Forget the fact we're being bleeded dry every day.
Oh, absolutely.
By gasoline prices and the tax.
Yeah. In fact, I think I have a picture of somebody. I'll look it up while we're listening to this little next part of Gavin Newsom's comments over at the Deal Book Summit by the New York Times.
I think define our party about social justice, economic justice. I think we recognize it's important to focus on growth, but also focus on inclusion. We have pre-distribution Democrats, we have redistribution Democrats, and therein lies the dialectic, and therein lies the debate within the Democratic Party. We also have Democrats that are representative of their districts.
Okay, so here he was supposed to say that
I want to be a Big Ten party. It's about addition, not subtraction.
Yeah, blah, blah,
The
blah.
case.
I mean, I think.
Oh, here we go.
But this idea of a unifying theory of the case.
I mean, I think we all want to be protected. We all want to be respected. We all want to be connected to something bigger than ourselves. We have fundamental values that I think define our.
Okay, somewhere in that answer, which is just, it's just gobbledygook. I mean, he's got his Jesse Jackson talking points and in his verses and that sort of thing. But he says, I'm not in support of it. And later he says, in this Deal Book Summit interview with the New York Times, he says, it's only one union and it's one part of one union that's behind it. And there's only one person in that one union that's behind it. And so and they haven't even collected signatures on it yet. Now,
well, they won't necessarily correct. But let's take a step back on direct democracy.
Let me ask you something. Let me ask you this. Here's what I want to know. On this issue, are they holding it like a sword of Damocles over these billionaires' heads? Like, for example, or of course, the Republicans' heads. We are not going to pull the trigger on this if you give us the money for the illegal aliens. Okay, what do you think?
No, here's what's happening. The unions, and this is right now we have, so I'm going to take a quick second.
It's SEIU union. It's SEIU, like the most radical union in the doggone state.
I've only got a few minutes here, so let me try to explain this. Direct democracy has two versions in California. It's got a version that I specialize in, for example, with the initiatives where it takes 8% of the people that voted for governor last time to do a California constitutional amendment, 5% of the people that voted for governor last time to do an initiative, and then the state legislature themselves can put one on the ballot where they don't need to collect signatures. Putting that aside, the unions themselves, which well, there's really no good way to compare them except possibly to the mafia, the SEI union and the rest of them out there strong arming Gavin. And the problem with public unions, especially with the SEIU gets involved, like with the teachers union, is again, they always want more. Now,
Mm.
what Gavin Newsom is really saying is he doesn't want to threaten the billionaires because the billionaires donate a lot, Code Red California, to their causes that are out there, and the billionaires will flee the state. What the unions who are run, well, I say idiots, but I really don't want to insult any people who are actual idiots out there. So we need a whole new class of low intelligence. I'll leave it at that, right? That think they're going to tax a small group of people to raise money. Again, this isn't necessarily for any specific cause. It's to add to the pool of corruption. Here's a trivia fact for you that you might find fascinating. When Gavin Newsom came into the office of California as governor, allegedly, because we don't see him much out here, not that it's a bad thing, the budget of California was about 198 billion with a B dollars. Today, merely 6.5 years later, our budget is about 320 billion with a B. And of course, you
Jeez.
have to wonder where the hell the money goes. Because as you could tell, our roads suck, crime is up. And literally, if you ask people, and I got asked this a lot, why are you trying to recall Gavin? What's going wrong? I said, you have to name for me something in California that's going right. We don't rank number one in any category that you want to rank number one in. Now, Gavin tries to cover this up, of course, by making them very good at marketing. Proposition 50, as we know,
Yeah.
it's expletive deleted Trump. Our message should have been expletive deleted Gavin, et cetera, et cetera. But what Gavin knows, or the people around him do, the state isn't really majority Democrat. Hold on. This only about 35% or so of the registered voters are actually Democrat, 25% Republicans, hold that thought, and the rest are NPPs and other party. But the reality is, when I talk about percentages and getting things done, do you know what the biggest party is in California, Victoria?
Independence.
Nope. It's the party of apathy. It's the
Oh,
party of people that don't vote. In this upcoming gubernatorial primary we have coming up historically, where there are 22 million registered voters. I'm a math guy and a sales body, a public speaker for those of you out there. There are about 18 million people that have ever voted, allegedly. And of those 18 million, only about 7 million bother to even vote in the primary aggregate for all people running for governor. And as you go downstream in the undervote, Rob Bonta. And Rob and Mia Bonta, for those of you that are not familiar with them, well, lucky for you. But if they go down below when they die, Satan probably won't let them in. Their Office of Assembly office that Mia now got handed to by Rob, the alleged Attorney General of California, we could spend an entire show talking about his corruption, and we may spend part of this one. There are 252,000 votes in that assembly district. Historically, about 40,000 people in Oakland. How's it going for you, Oakland? Bother to even turn out to vote for that office. So the really biggest party in California is the party of apathy or non-participation. That's what I try to stimulate on social media. And I know you've been following my feed.
yes.
So we got
Yes.
here from there. And that's where I get about 4 million views a week. And that's what we do in Rebuild California, simply to say, look, what makes you outraged, the name of one of my shows. Because if you want to know why things aren't going so well, take a look around you. Things aren't going so well because you need to vote for something else because it's not working out very well for you.
Mm.
Gavin Newsom is really good at getting on stage with the New York Times. You were
Mhm.
talking about January 6th a couple seconds ago. And as is coming out, as the press covered in January 6th, look, it's the guy with the weird horn sitting at Nancy Pelosi's desk. One dude out of 100,000 people, 2 to 500 that maybe made a mistake that way, is what lies beneath that we don't pay attention to. That is the underbelly that the press is afraid to cover. That's a lot of really what's happening with Bonta Newsom and the corruption going on right now. The billionaire tax, at the end of the day, it just sets a bad precedent for them to, shall we say, put it up our posterior where the sun don't shine, to be polite. Um, to not let us pay attention to the little bleeding, the blood drops or bloodletting, as they said in medieval ages, to take
Mhm.
it out of us every day.
I mean, there's a lot of money in California, but I'll tell you something, there will be a lot less of it if the billionaires leave, and they will. And I know David Sachs said he was talking to his friends, all of whom are billionaires, and they might leave. And so I'm sure that, I know Elon said he left, and he brought back some of the Tesla R&D, and Gavin Newsom likes to make a big deal about that, because they are taking a spot that was previously occupied by HP, the founders of Silicon Valley. Yes,
I'm waving my hands because I
I
have a
see.
little bit background in economics here.
Mhm.
Let's be clear about something. Why Gavin likes to say, hey, we moved up to the fourth largest economy.
Yes.
California, in terms of the net, you know what a net largest economy is? Okay, it's kind of like the gross proceeds you have left over.
Uh-huh.
In just the United States alone, meaning the state, by the way, has a approximately 50 billion, that's billion with a B, boys and girls, deficit next year,
Yeah.
okay? And by the time you subtract the things out of the economy, we rank about 11th in just the United States alone. It's like profit left over. Like, look, my sales are $1 million. How are your expenses, Harvey? $1.5 million. Well, how'd it work out for you? Well, not so well. And
Mhm.
that's the state of California. So we
Mhm.
listen to Gavin Newsom because he has the bully pulpit, if you will. He's got the
Sure.
slick back hair, it could talk. But economically, California, on many metrics, frankly, on most metrics, really isn't doing this well. You know about our poverty rate, don't you?
I mean, it's the highest in the country, isn't it?
It's highest in the country percentage wise and highest in terms of gross number of people that
Mhm.
we have. Our education ranks lower than Alfred E. Newman, Mad Magazine reference for you old folks, IQ out there, because we spend more money per student, with one exception, New York City, on education than anywhere else. It's more than code red. Look, he let many portions of California burn. Whether it's inept or evil, we can
Yeah.
argue about in other segments, but the scoreboard is government's main job is not to support illegal aliens, it's to keep our posterior, there's a shorter word for it, safe. To keep
Right.
us from burning down, be attacked by criminals, to make sure that the potholes in the road aren't larger than Shasta. That's government's main job. And the reality is, when Elon Musk moves away from California, jobs go away. I don't really give a rodent's posterior if Elon Musk and David Sachs live in California. What I care about is the economic cycle, or the spreading out of money around California to keep people employed. And that circulatory effect of money is dropping rapidly in California, meaning, and California, sorry, has a crack problem that we call spending, which is
Mm.
why the budget in California
Mm.
has gone up by approximately 120 billion. That's billion with a B. Most of you are happy to have $10 that you get from Sub today, which is about what a Taco Supreme now cost, a burrito Supreme cost a Taco Bell now. Work on that in California. So the bottom line is, every time the unions do things to up minimum wage, to mess with what we and conservatives like, the free hand of the economy, it creates more towards the socialistic side, which is causing the economy of California to go like this. Gavin Newsom can't even spell economics. No, he gets parrots what other people preach to him about, we're the fourth or fifth. And by the way, we only graduated to fourth because Japan had an expletive deleted year, so they dropped to fifth, right? But that's gross economy, not net economy,
Okay.
which is how you judge it in California.
That's good. That's good to know. Tell me a little bit about how things are going after the fires in the Eaton fire and the Palisades fire, and how's that rebuilding going, Mike Natter?
Well, that's easy to answer. It's not. Okay. It simply isn't going at all. Okay. Now, my personal story here, which I rarely share, but most people know, my house burned down in the San Diego wildfires in 2007.
Oh, I
Don't need a
remember that
law.
one.
Didn't have to
No.
clean the garage that year. Got out. Hey, everybody was happy, healthy, and alive. Right. And the problem we have is that this just in, the fire shouldn't have happened at all. You know, one of the two main reasons the fires happen, right?
This particular one or
This
in general?
particular one.
Well, because they didn't stop the other one, the Lockman fire, and then they decided to not fight the fire because the Topanga Canyon was a natural area, and they thought, and then the rule was that they had to not fight it,
So
which is
two
right
things. You
next to
summed it up pretty
Palisades.
well. I'm not as smart as you, so let me keep it simple. Okay. Bottom line is they didn't clear the brush.
Well,
Okay. And you
there
could
was a
go
there was
back
a
and
law
forth.
against that. They couldn't
Okay,
because that was
right,
their
yes. But here's something else. You heard that the hydrants ran out of water. And
Yes.
for everybody else, and this is really the scary part for political advocates like myself and for you. Look, I didn't grow up wanting to be a water expert. I want to turn on my faucet and the water comes out. Here's
Sure.
the bottom line. There was a big posterior reservoir in the Los Angeles area that
Sure.
was left empty for a year and a half. Do you know why it was left empty?
Because
Because
it
they
had to tear. It had to tear in the
oh,
cover because
right.
they turned it from a wildfire source of water to a drinking water source
They
of water.
turned it to no source of water. They left it empty after the fire.
So
They
true.
needed to do a bid. Are you ready for this? For $148,000, which is nothing. LA City's $1 billion in debt. Pool cover. You can call it whatever you want. It's a really big pool cover. And because the government in California couldn't get around to replacing a pool cover, and I know I'm not the brightest brick on the pile, but I believe you need water to fight fire. Now let's talk about once they burn down, okay? And Karen Bass, and by the way, I apologize if any children are watching the show for using Bass's name, but I went ahead and said it. Bragged, we built one house. No, you haven't. The house that was built in the Palisades was already permitted ahead before the fires, so the rebuilding isn't going at all. And you ready for more? You ready for
Yes.
more? Are you
Yes.
sitting down? After
I am.
burning down all these homes, the Los Angeles City Council, and it's really hard to call them that with a straight face, it's 14 communists and a Democrat who isn't so communist, but let's leave it at that, voted the other day to say, we're not sure if we can waive the permitting fees. You heard about this, right?
No, I didn't hear about
We
that
can't waive
decision.
the permitting fees on these people building their homes because we're not sure that we can afford it. So hold on. What you did is let their houses burn, maybe cause their houses to burn, and now say we can't waive the permitting fees for burning down your hostages. That's like taking me hostage in a van and then calling me up from the kidnappers beside me and saying, would you mind paying your own ransom?
How do you deal with that in California? I have family there. I've lived there for multiple decades. I have lived in all 3 states on the West Coast, West Coast. And the most dysfunctional one, and from whom they take all of the other states take their cues, is California.
A
What
lot
the
of
hell?
times they take their cues from California because they're interlinked.
Oh,
When you
yes.
talk about oil, the Western States Petroleum Association,
It's a
okay,
cartel. Mhm.
is the Western States Petroleum Association. Here's a trivia question for you. Do you know about the oil pipeline coming from Texas to California?
No, not off the top of my head. Please tell me
No, you
about
don't,
this.
because there isn't one. They're working on building one. There has never been an
I
oil
was drinking
pipeline.
something.
I knew that. That's why I waited till you did that. I got timing. Okay. So the reality is when Gavin Newsom forbids drilling in California in favor of the environment, okay, he is screwing. In fact, by the way, the governor of Nevada and even Oregon wrote him a letter and said, don't do that, along with the Democratic governor of Arizona, because it ups the prices for everybody. So what Gavin Newsom does is the oil now comes in from places like Venezuela, Ecuador, fine upstanding countries, on big belching ships. So it can cost us more and screws Western states as a whole. We may finally get a pipeline. That's why gasoline, they sent you that thing this morning. And by the way, if you ever want to get looks on X, or views as we call them, just put up a picture of California gas. People go, you're making it up, you're lying, it's photoshopped. No, I went down to the local ARCO station and took a picture. I don't need to Photoshop. Yes, indeed, our gas is over $2 a gallon higher. For those of you out there
That's
who
true.
broke away from hugging your tree to listen to this show, you're not helping the environment. You're making it worse, because, again, it's brought in by big belching ships, which come across the ocean a very long way from countries who consider slave labor minimum wage.
Wow.
So how do we deal with it? Oh, you had a question there. Sorry. How do we deal
No.
with it is this. We go about our lives and groups like this fight. Rebuild California. I realize I'm running out of time. I'm on till about 2 here. So let me sum this up. We do this by saying the major thing we're fighting is the party of apathy. RebuildCalifornia.com. We are a group of people who started the recall of Gavin Newsom. We're gathering the state. Go to my X feed at Netter Mike, where every day, probably literally 60, 70 times a day, we put out materials just to tick you off. We do a show live just like yours, California Free Radio, that's on blasting on our Facebook channels. Get active, do something. LinkedIn, follow me, go to our YouTube channel, Outrage. But here's the thing, hold on. Before you cut me off, let me make this perfectly clear. Everybody out there, when you're watching television, most of you right now, if you have children, adult or small, you don't know where they are, but you know where your cell phone is at all times. Don't lie to me, you do. And digital, the people that you know, you can take and email out up to 200 emails a day at no cover charge information to the people that don't give a damn, which I call the party of apathy. We do have the ability to do things, but don't pay attention to the mainstream media who's dropping like a rock and beans. Pay attention to what we're doing here, because here's the reality. It's up to you as an individual. Don't rely on somebody. No one's coming to save you. It's up to you to take
Yep.
that little action to poke that neighbor around the corner and just let them know what's going on. Thank you for having me on today. I know I probably belong in a home, and I apologize it didn't take
Do not.
my mental medication before starting, but I'm out. Who can afford it on Obamacare?
Oh, man. That's another thing. Illegal aliens overwhelming Obamacare. Oh, well, thanks, Mike Netter. I appreciate it. Yes, as a matter of fact, yeah, that's why Gavin Newsom was taking his little tin cup to Washington, D.C., and then got no meetings because he needed money and nobody wanted to talk to him in the Trump administration. I can't imagine why. Why would they want to do that? Okay, a couple of things that we've got coming up just because we're nearly at our hour, and Mike Netter is so entertaining, isn't he? But this is a different way to go. And it's this. In Portland, because there's two woke cities I'm going to tell you about and their laws of justice here. One was in Portland. Use of racist slur by wounded man. Here, I'll let you see this. Let me show this to you. Let me show it to you. Yeah. Use of racist slur by man actually gets the guy who did it, stabbed him, off. This is pretty interesting. It's outrageous, actually. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because this case, this guy was, there was an imbroglio between a black man and a white man. Both are the same age. Both are homeless. Both are cracked out. Both are, they're on the streets and they're not fully, their faculties are not fully intact, because that's what happens on the street. So here we have this story where we find out that an old town stabbing case ended in defeat. This is the lead. This is not the lead. For the Multnomah County prosecutors, once jurors learned that the wounded man who'd been stabbed by the black homeless loon had been videoed uttering a racist slur in the struggle's aftermath. This was, okay, they do contain everything here. But the thing is that how can you find a man innocent of a stabbing or stabbing a victim in this case? I'm sure there are no winners in this thing, okay? Because they're both. But the black man stabs the white man in the shoulder, and the guy has to go to the hospital and has serious injuries. And then the jury finds the black man innocent, lets him go, because the white man, who knew the black man, called him a racist word, allegedly. And here's the interesting thing about this story. So I've looked around at this and I'm like, what? This reminds me of the Seattle story. I'm going to share it with you. The Seattle story is, for a minute there, had no video to go with it. And then we knew there was video. There is video of the black man stabbing the white man, which is not being shown, and I'm going to ask for it. And apparently it was shown in court, but it didn't really matter to see the actual charge and the guy doing what he's charged with. Oh, no. The problem was, after he was stabbed, he called the guy a name that wasn't very nice. And as a matter of fact, got off. That other guy, the bad guy, got off. That's not justice. I'm sorry. That's not what you call justice. That's stupid. Yeah, both bad actors. That's stupid. Now check this out. If you've been on the street with people who are homeless and cracked out, okay? Fentanyl full, they look like human tacos, and or any number of drugs on which they could be gone. Check this out. While Edwards admitted to the stabbing on the witness stand, he admitted to stabbing the guy. Okay? This is an open and shut case, okay? He said it was self-defense based on another man's aggression. Well, I'd love to see the video of that, because nobody describing what's in the video says that it was an aggressive thing. Edwards testified that Gregory Howard Jr. yelled a racist slur as soon as he saw him, and Howard denied that. That's the alleged victim. Well, I see he was a victim, obviously. Now, check this out. Transit cameras showed Edwards had a fixed blade knife clasped at his side, approaching Howard from behind as he sat on a bench. The video has no sound, but Howard springs up. Now, why would he do that? If he didn't know the guy was coming? Did he not know the guy was coming? Howard springs up and pushes Edwards as soon as he sees him. The duo scuffle against a wall for a brief moment, ending with Edwards stabbing Howard in the shoulder. The defense attorney said the most relevant evidence was recorded later. Evidence of which we don't see, by the way. When security officers heard the wounded man shouting the racist slur and captured it on their body cameras as he described the incident. He was a victim by that time. He was stabbed. Are we in agreement with that? So Small says, his attorney, was simply approaching Howard and offering a polite trade. So the guy with the knife, who stabs the white guy with the knife, said, his defense attorney said, he's just sauntering up to say hello to a friend on the street. And he wanted to, what did he call it? Offering a polite trade. His knife for some cigarettes. And if you believe that, I got another bridge to sell you over the Willamette River. What other than racism could explain why Mr. Howard perceived hatred, animosity, and aggression from a complete stranger? Small asked the jury on October 30th. How incredibly prejudicial is this? What does that have to do? I mean, I understand there are fighting words, but you should probably retreat instead of stabbing the dude. If he's coming at you and you have to defend yourself, that's one thing. You should be able to defend yourself. But from what? Words? And does anybody believe that he was there to make a polite trade with another guy? Okay, so then they let the black perpetrator off. That's insane. That is stupid. Oh, wait, but there's more. So in Seattle, this is another woke community. These Seattle's 700 police officers down in there, a full complement of officers they should have for the population. Okay. So what happens? It's another one of these loons. It's another one of these loons on the street, cracked out. Things are bad. And this law and disorder, I've got both the Space Needle and Mount Hood in the same picture. So I don't want to hear about it. I already know I did that. Mount Hood's in Oregon, Space Needle's in Washington. So this is the Othello station in Seattle, the light rail station there. And this is very hard to watch. But the left said, how dare the police shoot this man? All he needed was a friend. How dare that they shot this guy, a long gun used, they didn't say that words because I'm pretty sure they don't know, but a long gun used in this crime against this individual. So the Seattle police put out this video that has the body cam of the cops shooting this guy, and he dead. And I was on Seattle radio Friday, and I was like, "Whoa, what's going on with this case?" I don't get how it is that, first of all, I didn't know why a long gun would be involved because I didn't know how, what the conditions were in the shooting. But that was the second cop comes up. First cop used his service weapon. And I want you to see what this guy was doing. You tell me if the cops shouldn't have shot him. Watch this. You'll get it in a second. It's really hard to watch. So if you got kids, probably no kids watching, but man did not comply, pointing a gun at the officers who then responded with lethal force. But all he wanted was just a friend. How dare they use a long gun?
911, what's the location of your emergency?
Hey, you guys better send somebody quick, man. There's a dude walking up the hill on Othello between Rainier. He walking up Othello up Rainier from Rainier, and he got a gun. He got a gun
There he is.
in his van, and it's pointed at everybody that drive by.
Okay, so the cops get there. The first responding officer gets there. And the dude with the gun is somewhere under this. I hope you can see my cursor. I think you can. Right over here. It took me a couple of times, like, well, where's this guy coming from? Anyway, so that's where he's coming from. So let's continue to watch. This is what the left is doing protest marches about and complaints about. That was the guy reporting the bad guy, saying he is pointing his gun at innocent people driving by. Oh, hell no.
Move.
Here he comes.
Drop it! Drop it! Drop it!
Okay. The guy knows. He hears their sirens. He knows what's going on. Continue watching. When you'll see him in a second.
Drop the gun! Drop it!
And there he is. So he holds the gun up and then he lowers it like he's going to shoot us. But he's not done yet. I mean, that's, hello, that's very bad. He did, probably at that point. However, check this out. He raised the gun again. He raised the gun again. Go back and look at that. Drop the gun! Drop it! Now, what do you do in that case when the guy active, he's there, he's pointing his gun at innocent people. You've got a complaint from a guy who says, "Hey man, this guy's pointing his gun at people just driving down the street." Is that something that we should tolerate as a society? Is this okay? Is this an individual who needs a friend, or does he need to have his gun taken away from him? He needs to have some information that perhaps he ought to, remove his gun, drop the gun, like he's been asked 5 gazillion times already. Drop the gun. What does he do? He doesn't. I mean, that's bad, man. Now all of a sudden, people are screaming at him. Here's a second guy. He's got the AR. Drop it! Drop it! Drop it! Drop it! Yikes. Okay. You're the guy with the gun and you're cracked out on something, maybe. Or you're just you were actually just going to the library with your gun. Perhaps you were looking for a friend because all the people in Seattle said, he just needed some understanding and a friend. How about you put the gun down and you can have some understanding and a friend? Stop it! Drop the gun! Hey! Behind you! Yeah, he was pronounced dead at the scene. Okay. This is how rumors and bad storylines and outrageous narratives begin. You had people immediately go to the light rail station around there and say that, and make protestations that this guy was just a misunderstood person. He wasn't dangerous. He was just looking, as I said, for a friend, as some of the reaction put it. But this guy had a rap sheet. He had a gun. Moreover, he had a gun. And he was pointing it at people. And he lowered it at the cops. And then when he was put down the first time with the first volley of shots, there was a second volley of shots. Why? Because he raised his arm with the gun. What are you supposed to do as a civilized society? Killing people is the last resort. But you're scaring the hell out of people on the streets of Seattle, and you've got a guy saying exactly what he did. You show up with your lights and siren. He knows you're there. Your presence is there. The what is it? The ladder of force. I know there's a different way of saying it, but the ladder of force has already started. Your presence, and then your verbal commands, and then you have to take some action. And are you going to tase him? No, he's too far. He's got a gun. He could shoot you dead. You're going to have to do something about that. What are you going to do? You're going to shoot him. That's what you're going to do with a gun, because he won't put down his gun. And it's disturbing to watch, obviously. This is not okay in any way, shape, or form. It's not, and it started with it's not being okay with this guy walking down the street with a gun in his hand. And it is just made worse by the misinformation from the left, who had all kinds of arguments about, he's just this poor guy. We got to just make sure that he gets some help. Come on, you guys. Poor man. Yeah, probably a poor man, probably a guy who needed help. But you can't find out if he needs help if he's got a gun in his hand and he won't put it down. One person on Twitter says, the cop-hating leftists, they got it wrong again. I'll never understand why people take these activists at their word without doing their own research. And you know what? I was trying to, What? Did they really pull a long gun there? Did they really pull an AR type rifle in a crowd of people? Because I thought, shoot. No, you can't shoot that way. Well, there weren't a lot of people around. Just that guy, clear and open. Boom. And it looks like a good shoot. So divest the Diego's, just resort back to muscle memory for me. That's where I started my career in San Diego. So divest San Diego Police Department says the school was 0.2 miles away, and no one reported that he had pointed it at them. He was holding his gun. The unit on the scene radioed that it was behind his back. I'll just share this with you. As a matter of fact, let me just make sure you can see it for the final remaining moments of the program. I just want you to see what some crazy people are saying about this. And let's see. Nope. Hold on, guys. Sometimes you lose things especially on the, whatever. Blah. Anyway, people are upset because a man lost his life, and doggone it, he had a gun, and he ought not have had a gun, but okay. Well, Chief didn't say he pointed a weapon at officers. He said that the guy advanced on them, which could mean he literally took a single step. The last radio broadcast on the scene before shots fired was that the guy had the gun behind his back. That's how hands up, don't shoot. That kind of crap. That's how that stuff starts. By the way, that was a total lie. There was no time at which Michael Brown said, hands up, don't shoot, or he had his hands up. He never had his hands up. He had his hands coming down in the car at the officer Darren Wilson and that Ferguson Bimbroglio between those two. Have you heard of Darren Wilson since then, by the way? Or has he been killed by the left? The last time I heard, he was in hiding. This is outrageous. Seattle activists tried to re-narrate what had happened. That's why the cops put this out. That's why they put that video out. That's why they saw what was happening, and they knew that their only alternative was with the guy with a gun. It looked like a machine pistol or something. I don't even know what it was at this point. And, here he is. Let's look at it. Here we go, guys.
He's walking up Othello from Rainier, and he got a gun. He got a gun in his hand, and just pointed at everybody that drive by.
That sounds like a problem. Okay. So police want to have eyes on. So they get there.
Move. Drop it!
One.
Drop it! Drop it! Drop it! Drop the gun! Drop it!
How many times do you have to listen to this? 6 times. They're still telling him. They're still telling him to drop the gun, because even when he's down, because he pulls his arm up with the gun in it again. Check this out. Let it go. Goes down. You know what?
Hey, they're behind you!
I'd like to know who was behind him. Who was behind the cop. It's what do you think that the cops are supposed to do? Just put your ideas in the comments as we go along. I know it's a really tough thing to watch, but it's something that people need to see sometimes. You don't know how hard it is out there. It's like all these these military experts on the Coke boats. Oh, they couldn't possibly have gone back and blown up that second round on these guys. How dare they? That would be a war crime. The first bullet is approved. The second bullet is a war crime. Come on, man. I've been around a long time. I am the adult in the room, not the child. Remember, keep watch. Ascertain what it is that you're saying. Is it the signal or the noise? All right, I got to go because we'll be back on Thursday. I got a great show on Thursday. It's going to be awesome. So meantime, head up, heart out, and strive to be the adult in the room. And all I can say right at about this time is like, mischief managed. Thank you so much for watching and listening to this episode of the Adult in the Room podcast. We do not take you for granted. We appreciate every single person who tunes in every week to listen and watch this program. We're here every Tuesday and Thursday, live streaming on Rumble, and then on every other podcast platform shortly thereafter when we can port it over and get it over there as soon as we can. All the shows can be found at victoriataft.com, where the censorship regime has been banned by me. Follow me on social media at these names: Victoria Taft, the Adult in the Room podcast, and the Victoria Taft Show. Send media inquiries, or any others for that matter, to victoria@victoriataft.com. And here's a big ask. Would you please subscribe, share, like, comment, recommend, and give this program a 5-star rating where you can? We really appreciate it. We do not take that for granted either. Follow my work at, you guessed it, victoriataft.com. PJ Media, I write tons over there. Flamingo Audiobooks, and of course the radio. I don't do this alone. This show is produced and engineered by Overall Media. 1A Cast is responsible for some of the Adult in the Room podcast's imaging. Logo design by Hageman Creative. The Adult in the Room podcast is produced at Flamingo Road Studios. All rights reserved.